Redskins Report. Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sistren. I am your man and resident Redskins fan, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on the Redskins Report. Redskins trimmed their roster down to the mandated 53 players on their 2016 NFL roster. Now, notice I didn't say got their roster down to their final 53 because we don't know if this is going to ultimately be their final 53. There may be someone out there that piques their interest over the next 24 to 48 hours that makes it onto this roster and someone else gets cut in order to make space. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But as of right now, the 22 cuts necessary to get this roster down to 53 have been made. And so we will discuss. Now, not too different from what we discussed right after Wednesday night's game. Okay, I told you we weren't going to be that far off. And I was expecting to nail 51 of 53. That's what I told my buddy. That's what I told you all. I didn't think that we would be that far off. I said, maybe 2 or 3 max. But for the most part, we already knew who was going to make this roster. There were a couple of spots up for debate, up for grabs. And we thought that Wednesday's game versus Tampa Bay could have an impact. And I'm starting to side with Chris Cooley on this. And Chris Cooley basically said that the coaches already know who they have in mind for their 53-man roster going into that final game. That final game has little to no impact. There may be one roster spot available going into the final game, but for the most part, they know who's on the team, and we felt that way as well. But I thought that some guys had a chance going into that last game. I thought Logan Paulson may have had a chance. I thought that a guy like Mack Brown had a chance. I thought Cullen Jenkins was a surefire lock to make this roster going into that final game, and I was wrong, and right. We thought Logan Paulson had a shot, but he wasn't going to make it. We said that, and he didn't make it. But let's go through the roster quickly and talk about who did make it and who didn't. And we only got 2 wrong, okay? I know the one that's going to stir up the most controversy, and we'll talk about that one here in a second. But as expected, all 3 quarterbacks made it. And look, you can't put Nate Sudfeld out there. I know some of you were like, hey, we can put him on the practice squad. No, you can't put him on the practice squad. There are other teams around the league that have seen enough from a young quarterback that they will snatch him up, put him on their team, and develop him, and will be out back. You don't want to put yourself in that position. Okay, we've seen too many quarterback-needy teams around this league looking for young quarterbacks to develop. There's no reason to put your young quarterback out on the street and be left looking for another young quarterback in next year's draft. We already solved that in the 2016 draft. Let's not go looking for another one in 2017. So rather be safe than sorry, hung on to Nate Sudfeld. So Kirk Cousins, Colt McCoy, Nate Sudfeld, all on the roster. Running back position. This is the one that's going to cause the most drama, stir up the most emotion in most Redskins fans. As it does with every season almost, you could say. The one year was Marcus Macon. I remember that was a running back that a lot of people like. Marcus Mason was out there doing a lot of good things, and he didn't make the roster. About two years ago, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, Lake Seastrunk, remember, had the huge run. First preseason game for like 70 yards. We were all enamored by his speed. Didn't make the roster. Mack Brown, another prime example. The only difference between those years and this particular year is that we don't actually have a lead dog in-house. You know, back in the Clinton Portis days, you could care less who made the roster on the back end at the running back position. In the Alfred Morris days with Chris Thompson, you felt really good about the 1-2 punch up top. And even Roy Halou was in there as well. You were comfortable with what we had at running back. You really didn't care if a Lake Seastrunk made the roster, really. But this particular year, we're not sure what we have at running back. And because of that uncertainty, you thought a guy like Mack Brown would make this roster. Because of the unknown health and the durability issues and questions about Matt Jones. Who? Matt Jones. You would have thought that a guy like Mack Brown would have been able to make this roster, but obviously we were wrong. So it's intriguing to see a guy like Mack Brown miss out on this 2016 Redskins roster. But in the Redskins defense, they were looking to do some other things. And a guy that I really didn't give a lot of credence to making this roster made it. And they're looking to continue to develop him. And we'll talk about him when we get there. And because of that, to me, that one move, keeping an extra offensive lineman, I think Mack Brown's job was then lost because they needed that extra spot. Because they look at it as a breakdown of X amount of players on defense, X amount of players on offense. You know you're getting 3 specialists. So you can either go 24-26 one way or the other, 25 and 25, split it right down the middle. And in some cases, for some teams, it's 23-27. But you rarely see that because it's such a big discrepancy on one side of the ball. You want to keep it as close to even as possible. But every now and again, you'll get a team where there's a little bit of a discrepancy there between offense and defense and the breakdown in the number of players. But in our case, it was 24, 26, and 3. And Mack Brown was the odd man out on that running back group and really on this offensive side of the football. Receivers, we already knew this one to be the case. A lot of people, not a lot. I don't want to put words in most Redskins fans' mouth. There were some Redskins fans out there that said Rashard Ross didn't need to be on the roster. Really didn't understand where that angle was really coming from. Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon, Jamison Crowder, Josh Doxson, Ryan Grant, and Rashard Ross, all 6 of them made the roster. That was expected. Tight end position, Jordan Reed, Vernon Davis-Niles, Paul. We all said that those guys were going to make it. And Logan Paulson was the odd man out. And we said that on Wednesday night when we did this race to 53-man roster, that we felt like Logan Paulson was going to be the odd man out because the coaching staff had already sung and lauded the praises of one Vernon Davis for his ability to block. Well, that's the one strong suit that Logan Paulson has, is his ability to block. Well, if you tell me there's another guy that can do that job, then he becomes expendable. And then you also have another tight end on the PUP list that if need be, you can bring him up in the midpoint of the season. So, again, I thought it was going to be a tough uphill battle for Logan Paulson, and ultimately it was the end of the road for him as a Washington Redskin. Offensive line, this is where Mack Brown's position to me on the offensive side of football was snatched up. And it's not a surprise. I just didn't see it happening. Trent Williams, Spencer Long, Corey Lichtensteiger, Brandon Sheriff, Morgan Moses, to me, all locks. Well, not to me. Everybody assumed they were locks because they are the presumed starters. So, obviously, they're going to make the team. Here were the 2 locks on the bench. To me, I didn't think this was up for debate either. Sean Laval and Ty Nsekhe. Didn't think those guys were up for debate. They're the 2 best backups and the 2 swing players at their respective positions. Laval can go in and play either guard position. Ty Nsekhe can play either tackle position. So to me, there wasn't a debate there. I also gave you Austin Ryder on Wednesday and told you I thought he was going to make the roster. And he did. I thought he had a strong preseason. I thought he looked good. He looked like a guy that was developing. Remember, we drafted him in the 7th round 2 years ago. He made it on the practice squad last year. They brought him up this year, and he's been playing well throughout the preseason. He may be the future at the center position. Corey Lichtensteiger, don't know how much longer he has left at center. Austin Ryder may get in at some point in 2016, so it was good to see them keep him around. I did not anticipate, however, keeping a 9th offensive lineman. I thought 8 would be enough, a solid backup at each position. They went and they kept Ari Kwanjo. I want to say he was a 5th-round pick last season out of Alabama, was on the practice squad last year, and I thought he was going to find his way to the practice squad yet again, if not another NFL roster. Instead, Redskins decide that he's done enough, shown enough to remain on this roster as the 9th and final offensive lineman. So you can see where the switch was. You can see where the switch was made, where they didn't want to keep Mack Brown because they needed that spot for another offensive lineman. So Redskins end up going with 9. They opted for 9 offensive linemen and only 3 running backs versus 4 running backs and 8 offensive linemen. So a total of 24. We said 24 and 26 was going to be the breakdown. That ended up being the breakdown. They just swapped out a running back for an offensive lineman in the case of the final roster. You go to the defense. The defensive line is what changed. We were wrong on the defensive line. Chris Baker, Ziggy Hood, or at least I was. I don't know if you guys had the same thing that I had, but a lot of you said, hey, we agree with most of what you said. So Chris Baker, Ziggy Hood, Kendall Reyes, Ricky John Francois, and Kedrick Golston. And the surprise of this group, Anthony Lanier made this roster. Now, it's not a surprise that he made the roster from a standpoint of what he produced throughout the preseason. I thought Anthony Lanier was strong all preseason long. I just thought he was young, he was raw, and I thought they felt like they could sneak him on the practice squad and get away with it, and that they would, and keep a guy like a Cullen Jenkins, a veteran that knows his way around the football field. He looked to be in good shape. I thought he went out and played well versus Tampa Bay in that one preseason game that he did perform in that monsoon. I thought he would definitely be on this roster. I was wrong. They opted to go instead with the younger option. And again, Scott McCloughan much rather go with the younger, cheaper option than a guy that has done it in this league that you're going to have to pay a little bit more to, and more importantly, is 35 years old. So I still would have went with Cullen Jenkins. I thought that was the right move. But if you feel like you were going to lose Anthony Lanier out on the market, if you were to cut him free and cut him loose, then I understand the move. But if at all possible, again, we can't predict what would have happened. If they would have cut him loose and they would have lost him, they would have been upset. I can't predict, nor can they, what the market will dictate and if he'll be able to be snuck onto the practice squad. But one thing's for sure, they like the young youth of Anthony Lanier, and I thought he did some good things as well, but I thought we could use the depth in a guy that can help right now. We'll see. I expect Anthony Lanier to have to contribute at some point in 2016, but that was the big goal. So they ultimately only went with 6 defensive linemen. I had them going with 8. So they shaved off 2, and really it's 7 because I included Trent Murphy in this group, but we're going to, for the purposes of how they look at Trent Murphy on the roster itself, I'm going to move Trent Murphy down to the outside linebacker position instead of having him with the defensive lineman, which is what I did the first time around. So this list comes down from 8 to 6. Once again, Chris Baker, Ziggy Hood, Kendall Reyes, Ricky John Francois, and Kedrick Golson and Anthony Lanier make out the 6 defensive linemen that the Redskins kept on this roster. Outside linebacker, we got this one correct. Ryan Kerrigan, Preston Smith, Houston Bates, and Trent Murphy are your 4 outside linebackers. They may ultimately decide to do something there. I'm not sure. But we saw the writing on the wall there. That looked like that was going to be the 4 guys that they kept. We were spot on inside linebacker-wise, and I told you that this wasn't even up for debate. I didn't even have a player in a box in the inside linebacker position. After they cut Perry Riley Jr., this one was pretty much clear-cut and dry. We knew exactly what was coming here. Will Compton, Mason Foster, Terrence Garvin, Martrell Spate, and Sua Cravens all made the football team. That was not a surprise to anyone. Cornerback position. We got both of these positions right in the secondary, cornerback and safety. I thought there were some tough decisions to make here, but if you're smart and if you've been watching the same thing we've been watching, there really wasn't much to discuss here. Josh Norman, Bashar Breeland, Kendall Fuller, Deshaun Phillips, Greg Toller. Those guys were all locks in my mind. And then Quentin Dunbar was the only guy that I thought could potentially get the axe. But I said he's young, he's talented, he possesses gifts that you can't teach in size and length. There's no way you cut loose a guy that you've been grooming over the last year and a half. That's not how you do business. You got a young player that you like, he's a cheap option, and that you've been grooming. There's no way you cut him free and allow him to go prosper somewhere else. I felt like at the cornerback position, I said this on the last video, if there's one position that you need to overdo it at, if you're going to overdo it somewhere on your roster, especially defensively, it needs to be at cornerback. Those guys, they come into the lineup, they go out of the lineup with injuries. It's a position where you're going to need depth throughout the season. Keeping 6 here, to me, was a no-brainer. Safety. We said they could keep 4, they could keep 5. I thought they would keep 5. We were right again. D'Angelo Hall, David Bruton Jr., Will Blackman, and Duke Iheanacho, for me, were all locks. The one guy that I wasn't sure about, but I said they would be very, very reckless if they cut DeShazer Everett loose. They kept him on this roster. He's too important on special teams, and he gives you, usually there's about 1 or 2 guys you're like, I'm not comfortable with this guy being in the game. Trenton Robinson was that guy for me. You know, it used to be Reed Dowdy. Look, you know he's solid on special teams, but you say to yourself, if this guy's in the game, we probably are going to have some problems down the road. Okay, over the years, we've had those guys. You know them, you've seen them. Okay, I just listed a couple of them. I don't have a problem with DeShazer Everett in the game. I don't. If he's in at safety, I'm comfortable that he'll be able to get the job done. And also, he's a dynamo on special teams. To me, there was no reason that this guy should have ended up omitted off of this 53-man roster. There was no reason that his name shouldn't have been on the list of guys on this roster when it was all said and done. And they made sure that he was on this final 53-man roster. So 26 defensive players in all, which is what we said before. The only things that we got wrong here, or I got wrong, was the defensive line. They instead opted to get rid of Cullen Jenkins and swap him out for Anthony Lanier. That was it. That was the only thing we got wrong on the defensive side of football. And then, of course, your three specialists, Nick Sundberg, Tress Way, and D Hop. Okay? Dustin Hopkins. So that's the Redskins 53-man roster. The two big names that we didn't see getting cut, or at least one big name and the other guy that we just thought, no way he's getting cut, especially after the performance he put up versus Tampa Bay. No way, no how. But the Redskins did cut Cullen Jenkins and Mack Brown. Now, let me ask you a question. If you're Cullen Jenkins, you get up off your couch, Redskins give you a call, give you a workout, decide to sign you, and you're thinking as a veteran, you're going to make this team. No one calls guys this late in camp normally to cut them, 3-4 days later. And they had the audacity to send him to rainy, inclement weathered Tampa Bay to play in a meaningless preseason game as like a 13-year veteran, only to cut him 3 or 4 days later. Would you not be pissed? Because I know I would. How dare you? How dare you send me to Tampa to get wet and soaked to play in a game that is as meaningless as they come, and then cut me 4 days later? Really? Wow. Okay. Anyway, Mack Brown not making the team. Frustrating, but I can't say I'm surprised. I knew how they felt about Mack Brown, and I told you the same. If it came down to him or Robert Kelly, you already knew what they were going to do. They were going to tell Mack Brown, step, side to side. Hey, do that love slide outside the building, please. Not in here. So you already knew what time it was, man. And they did. They asked him to go ahead and keep on stepping. Step in the name of love that way. Not in our building. So Robert Kelly remains on the roster. Mack Brown no longer. So you can't say it's the return of the Mack. No, not return of the Mack. Oh, yeah. No return of the Mack. We don't know what Brown can do for us. All right. So want to hear what you guys got to say. No Mack Brown, no Cullen Jenkins. To me, the Jenkins release is a bigger surprise than the Mack Brown release. Because, again, I wasn't shocked that Mack Brown didn't make it. I thought he would. I said if he didn't, I get it, because they haven't been singing his praises of late. It's been Robert Kelly. No Mack Brown, no Mack Brown, no Mack Brown. So that's not surprising. What is surprising is that you go out, you cut Stephen Paya, you sign up Cullen Jenkins as if he's going to replace Stephen Paya on this roster, and then you cut Cullen Jenkins. But I don't have a problem with them cutting him because they kept Anthony Lanier, a guy that I was highly impressed with throughout camp and into the preseason. So it was a surprise to me, but let's see what you guys have to say. So we'll go back up to the top and we'll go to Twitter, and let's check Twitter first to see if you guys have anything to say in regards. Make sure you're using the hashtag Louie T Live. I'm going to go ahead and pull that up real quick, and we'll go ahead and start reading off a couple of these comments. So, at Bob Bonick says, overall, I'm pleased with our roster minus cutting Mack Brown, but I get it. You can't lose Sudfeld. Yeah, they weren't going to cut Nate Sudfeld. I assured you of that. I knew how this roster or how they felt about Nate Sudfeld, especially Jay Gruden. He loved Nate Sudfeld. He said, I wanted to see more of the Sudfeld show. He was impressed. I was impressed with Nate Sudfeld. And I think with some more, growing and grooming, this guy could be something. Who knows? I don't know if he's a starter necessarily, but I know he can play quarterback in this league, whether it be in a backup capacity or as a starter down the road. But at some point, I think he's going to see an NFL field, whether it be with us or someone else. And it's good to know that you're grooming potentially some part of your future, whether it's in a backup capacity because Colt McCoy is not going to be here forever, or it's in a starting capacity for Kirk Cousins. Who knows? We'll see. But Sudfeld wasn't going anywhere. Mack Brown, couldn't say the same for him. Let's see. All right, nothing else on Twitter right now at the moment. So we'll go to YouTube and the discussion board. And Andrew Kim says, Ravens just cut for a set. You think Redskins are interested? Maybe, maybe not. It's hard to really say. This is the thing. If the Redskins are going to go out and get a back off the streets, you don't want an old back. It's that simple. You know, last year we got Pierre Thomas out of necessity. You're at that late portion of the season. You need a guy. You don't go out and get a rookie. You get an experienced veteran that can come in and pick up your system quickly. A guy that can come in and give you some pass protection. A guy that can catch the football out of the backfield. A guy that you don't have to hold his hand and coddle him. He's a veteran. He understands what he needs to do, and that he's a hired mercenary, and he can come in and help you at that point of the season. That's why we went out and got Pierre Thomas. But make no mistake about it, this is the beginning of the season. Before the season gets underway, they're not looking for an older running back. They're looking for young, fresh legs. So if they're going to go out and get a running back and add him to this group, which I don't see them doing, because if they were going to do it, they probably would have already did it. But if they were going to do that, you want a young guy. Okay, the running back position, I said the same thing about corner. And to me, the two are synonymous with one another. They and essentially represent the same type of thing. The running back position, much like the cornerback position, no country for old men. You don't want an older back. That's why the Ravens cut Justin Forsett. He can still perform at a high enough level to make that Ravens roster. They just got a bunch of young backs, and they're like, hey, you're an older guy. We're ready to move on. Simple as that. So, I didn't expect him to get cut either, though, to be honest with you. RG3, hashtag smoking at 3, hashtag 1000. Hashtag dog pound, hashtag 1716 MVP. What happened to Keith Marshall? Simple. Keith Marshall got injured, sprained his elbow, was going to be out for at least a month. Redskins put him on IR. Simple as that. He wasn't going to make the team anyway. He would have made the team had he stayed healthy and performed well against the Bills, because he was going to get a ton of carries that night. But he didn't. He hasn't shown me one thing that said, hey, we got to keep Keith Marshall. Not one single thing this entire preseason. So, really don't have much to say about him. All right. See what else is being said, if anything. Mr. DCB215 says, there are a number of intriguing players on the street. I think Manny Lawson can help us right away. Cobb from the Texans looked like a good prospect. Any thoughts? You know how I feel about David Cobb, man. I told you I would love to take a bite out of that corn on the cob. Straight up. We need us a young back. And I was enamored with David Cobb coming out of Minnesota when he was drafted last year. And I would love to take a long, hard look at David Cobb on this Redskins roster. Because you're not telling me the guy can't play. You know what I mean? I think he could be a great addition to this football team, but does Scott McCloughan feel the same way? Did he have this is what it boils down to. Did Scott McCloughan have a high and favorable grade on David Cobb coming out of Minnesota? If the answer is no, then he won't bring him in. If he did like David Cobb, and this is the reason why I don't think we're going to bring him in, he was cut on the first round of cuts. When they cut their roster down to 75, if we were that intrigued with David Cobb, we would have signed him then. Just like we signed Vincent Painter, we would have signed him then. We didn't. So that lets me know that I don't think we're that interested in David Cobb, even though I would love to take a flyer out on David Cobb, bring him in, because I think he can upgrade our running back position right now. If they like Robert Kelly so much, you telling me David Cobb's not better than him? I refuse to believe that. Refuse to believe that. Let's keep it moving. See what we got. All right. Manny Lawson, let me address this because you did ask about Manny Lawson. Manny Lawson is solid, but I don't think he really moves the needle. He's versatile, could drop into coverage, a lot of speed, would add team speed to our team instantly, but I don't really think he adds from a pass rush standpoint, which is what we need more than anything else. If we went out and got an outside linebacker to bring into this group, he would need to be a guy that can get some pressure. And I don't see Manny Lawson as that type of player, not necessarily. So don't think Manny Lawson would be in our plans. RG3 hashtag smoke that 3 hashtag 1000 hashtag dog pound hashtag 1716 MVP. Do you think Pyle will destroy O-line and kill Kirk week 4 versus the Browns? Nah. Good luck with Stephen Pyle, by the way. You know, Browns just signed him up the other day. Good luck. I hope he plays better for you guys than he did with us. Because I don't know what the hell happened to him when he got to Washington. He just went kaput for us. So, no, he's not. He probably won't even sniff Kirk Cousins, man. Probably won't sniff Kirk Cousins. But good luck to you. Hopefully you get something out of him. We squeezed that rag. It was dry in Washington. Hopefully you can squeeze the rag and get something out of that. Because that rag was completely dry when we finished wringing it out. Walter Hannett says, are you comfortable with our D-line depth? No, I'm not. And I don't, right now, I'm more concerned with the rotation than I am the depth. Here's why. Look, we only got 6 players. I'm aware of that. Trent Murphy makes 7 if you want him to double as a defensive lineman. No, I'm not comfortable with that. But I think we have enough quality, if used correctly, to get by. Look, we should be starting Ziggy Hood, Chris Baker, and unfortunately, Kedrick Golston. That should be our starting 3. Kedrick at nose and Baker and Hood at both defensive end 5 technique spots. The first dude off the bench should be Ricky John Francois. Okay? To me, he's the most dynamic and explosive player in that whole group. And the only reason I wouldn't start him necessarily is because I think Hood and Baker are a little bit better against the run. But that being said, I want to see more Ricky John Francois. Less of Kendall Reyes, who right now is penciled in as a starter. Why? I don't know. I told you he shouldn't even be on the damn roster. Anthony Lanier might not even be active on most game days because he's a guy that we kept just so we wouldn't lose him. But I don't think he's a guy that contributes right away. Maybe week 8, week 9. He's a guy that you need to come up, fresh legs, be able to come up and help you a little bit. But I'm not looking for Anthony Lanier, and I don't think they are either to contribute right away. So really, this is not that deep of a group. He may be active on most Sundays, my Anthony Lanier, but I don't expect him to be a huge contributor. You know, he'll feel that, what's the guy's name we had a couple years back? Kearse. He'll fill that Frank Kearse role for us. You know, a guy you don't see very often. When you do, he flashes, makes some plays sometimes, but not a guy you're relying on to help you. And I think that's the kind of role that he'll have. But no, to answer your original question, I'm not overly comfortable with our defensive line depth. No, I'm not. And I'm not that happy with the D-line rotation right now because Kendall Reyes should be as far away as possible from the starting lineup. And he's not. He's actually in it, which makes no sense. All right. Poopin' for Noopin says, what do you think of Sharkandrick West or Ronnie Hillman in terms of a trade? Based on injury history, I don't think we can go in with only 3 backs. I'd kill to have Lydell Betts back. He took it way back to the Stephen Davis days. Lydell Betts, or actually that's back to the Clinton Portis days. Lydell Betts. I was thinking of Skip Hicks. Do y'all remember Skip Hicks out of UCLA behind Stephen Davis? I might have took it over some of y'all heads there. Don't worry about that. I don't know if they're going to just go with 3. They could be another signing coming. Like I said, the roster isn't etched in stone quite yet. You know, still could be some moves made. We're not trading for anybody. I don't expect us to trade for anybody's back. I think they're content with what we have. And, you know, the only way they would upgrade the position itself is through free agency with a guy that has clear waivers and has a chance to be signed. But I'm not sure. You know, I've heard that Pierre Thomas is still on speed dial if necessary. So I don't know if they do anything until they have to, until they're prompted to, which I don't know if I'm all that comfortable with. but I think they know that they got an ace in a hole in their back pocket, and his name is Pierre Thomas. Worst case scenario, they've been in contact with him to make sure that he's staying in shape, and he's the consummate professional. If they need to, if, say, Matt Jones goes down week 2, re-aggravates the AC joint, and this time it's a little bit more severe, and he's got to miss 6 games, they know they can call up Pierre Thomas. He knows the offense already from last year. He can step right in and help right away. So I think right now they're okay with what we have, but I, like you, think that we do need to do something, and I'd like to be more proactive than reactive. I'd like to go out and get a guy before all the really solid backs that actually have some upside are snatched up, and then we just got to take a dude just to be taking a dude just because we don't have a choice because we only got 2 backs that are healthy on our roster. You know what I'm saying? RG3 hashtag smoking that 3. Y'all get the picture. Says, why don't the Redskins sign Ray Rice? No. I already told you why we wouldn't sign Ray Rice. He's old. Look, I don't think it has anything to do with him being blackballed anymore. I think if Ray Rice was 25 years old and he was a really good running back in this league, he would have been signed by now. I'm convinced of that. I mean, the Vikings could have easily said, peace to Adrian Peterson. Remember, there was a big controversy. There was a lot of drama surrounding that Adrian Peterson situation. It was not a good look for the Vikings. The NFL was going through it. They had just come off the heels of the Ray Rice situation. Domestic violence was at an all-time high in the league. They had guys like the ex-49ers and ex-Chicago Bears player Ray McDonald getting into trouble yet again behind some domestic violence. It was not a good time to be in trouble in the league. And then Adrian Peterson gets popped for beating his kid with a switch, and all of a sudden everybody's all up in arms. The Vikings, if Adrian Peterson was Ray Rice, they would have cut him. But he's Adrian Peterson, so they didn't. That's the difference. Ray Rice is Ray Rice. And he's not young Ray Rice anymore. He's old Ray Rice. That's some 3-day-old rice that you just took out of the fridge. I don't want to eat that. If that was fresh off the stove and hot, yeah, maybe I consume some of that. That's some old rice, man. I don't want old rice. It's hard, it's stale, it's not good to chew. Doesn't go down in my digestive system very well. So we don't want old rice. If that was some new, freshly cooked rice, maybe. But it's not. So that's why the Redskins don't want it. Poopin' for Noopin says, are we just taking a chance on Matt Jones or do a patch job till next year's draft? Look, Scott McCloughan is sold on Matt Jones. He's all in. He's pushing all his chips to the middle of the table. He drafted Matt Jones in the 3rd round, which everyone, including myself, thought was a reach. Matt Jones was not a third round back when he selected him. Matt Jones was more of a 4th or 5th round back. To me, a 5th round back at best. And he took him in the 3rd round because of the size, the speed, and the ability that he saw in him to be dynamic. Remember, he was a part of that Marshawn Lynch whole deal. He was there with Frank Gore. He thought he saw a lot of those guys in him in terms of his ability. More so Marshawn Lynch than Frank Gore, but nonetheless, he thought he had that kind of a player. He still does. He believes that if Matt Jones can just stay healthy, that this guy will be a premier back in this league. So this is not a situation where you're just looking to get by until next year. If Matt Jones falls flat on his face, can't stay healthy, doesn't perform well, fumbles the football again, yeah, they'll be looking for a back next year in next year's draft. Best believe that. But if Matt Jones is able to stay healthy, they think that he's going to perform at peak performance enough to the point where we won't be having this same discussion come next year. That's how confident Scott McCloughan is in Matt Jones. We will find out together if Matt Jones is who Scott McCloughan thinks he is or who a lot of you think Matt Jones is, because a lot of you, I've talked to a lot of you who don't buy what Matt Jones is selling. And I don't blame you. Even though I believe in Matt Jones, I think Matt Jones can be a dynamic back in this league. He just has to stay healthy. Can't fumble the football, but more importantly, availability is necessary. Simple as that. Or as I was once told by a wise man, the best ability is availability. You're not around to play. What good are you to me? Mr. DCB 215 says, I'm a little worried about our D-line and our running backs. I don't believe Matt Jones is a quality starter. He's a 230-pound back that runs like he's 180. I've heard that from a number of people. Look, it is what it is. We're going to have to run with Mac Jones. That's who? Mac Jones. We're going to have to run with him this year. That's what they're going to do. That's who they want to roll with. That's what we're going to have to do. Hopefully, he is able to stay healthy and he's able to get the job done. But right now, I can't assure you that that's going to happen. And I, too, am worried about our defensive line depth. We'll see how it shakes out. But that Buffalo game, I haven't been really confident since. I'm a little uneasy after seeing what the Bills were able to do to us on the ground. Let's see. Where was I? Here I am. Right here. I'm at Daddy Smoke Yams. And I'm going to come back to you. Let me see if I got anything on Twitter. Yeah, I got one more. I'm going to hit this Twitter one and I'm going to come back. At Boba Bonic says, what the hell is going on in the NFC East? First, Bradford is gone. Now Sanchez will be going to Dallas, laughing my ass off. Yeah. You knew Dallas was looking for a veteran quarterback. You knew that. It was only a matter of time. They weren't going to give up any picks or anything crazy like that for a guy that they don't expect to have to play. They just need some insurance that in case Dak Prescott goes down, they got to have a healthy body that they can stick in the game. And that's what Mark Sanchez was going to be. Dirty Chez is not going to see the field at all in Dallas unless it is an absolute necessity, break the glass in case of an emergency type of situation. But it's just insurance for them. As far as the Eagles, they've had an eventful day. I've talked about it twice already today. I don't know what's going on with their thought process in terms of wanting to start Carson Wentz, but we'll see what happens there. But to me, the Bradford deal was pure genius on their part. I thought they really did themselves some good by moving Sam Bradford for. Sam Bradford's not worth a first-round pick. We all know this. So to get it for him, got to say they really made out like bandits. But again, it's a win for both teams involved. I've said that already. I'll say it again. Daddy Smoke Yam says, Ryder over Cofield and Bates over Trail. Are you cool with these decisions, or do you think there will be additional moves, especially at outside linebacker? Ryder over Cofield, totally down with that. I told you that I thought Austin Ryder not only should make this roster, but deserved to make this roster. I thought he played his way onto this roster this year. I think the coaching that he took last year on the practice squad, you saw him get bigger and more physical. I just thought he performed well over the preseason. So I was totally on board with him. Jacoby Cofield didn't show me anything. I wasn't impressed with him. And we got Ty Nsekhe. Feel good about that as a backup swing tackle. Bates over Trail. Now, if you wanted to argue that one, I'd listen. But again, Bates is much better on special teams than Lyndon Trail is. And Lyndon Trail didn't knock my socks off. I know, again, this is one of those situations. I'd rather deal with the evil I know than the evil I don't know. I don't know Lyndon Trail. I don't know what else he brings to the table. I see a big guy that's long and physical that can probably help you stop in the run-wise, but I didn't see a guy that could get to the quarterback. You know, I've seen some explosiveness from Houston Bates, every now and again. It's not something that he flashes often, but I've seen it before. We saw him run in the backfield and make a tackle for loss against Dallas on a 3rd and 1. Or was it 4th and 1? One or the other. We've seen Houston Bates make some impactful plays for this football team. We know how good he is on special teams. We don't know any of those things about Lyndon Trail. And thus, I'd much rather go with the evil I know than the evil I don't know. So I was cool with both of those. And any additional moves at outside linebacker? Hard to say. Really don't know. I'm not comfortable with outside linebacker. I'm not comfortable with it at all. Because, just think about this. If Kerrigan or Preston Smith go down, we have nothing behind those guys. Are you comfortable with sticking either Houston Bates or Trent Murphy in the game? You shouldn't be, because I'm not. We got to pray that those guys stay healthy because we have nothing. Nothing behind them. Zero. That's one of those positions we definitely need to replenish next year in the draft. We need to be over-aggressive. We need to get 2, at least 2. Especially with Junior Gillette going down every offseason. You got to get 2 outside linebackers. Not 1, 2 next year. Daddy Smoke Yam says, we are probably going to play with a bunch of nickel So with Smith, Murphy, and Kerrigan all capable of playing defensive line, I think we'll be okay there. And I agree. We're only in our base 3-4 odd front, 30, 35, 40 max percent of the time? 60% of the time, 70% of the time, we're in nickel, 4-man fronts. I'm with you, Daddy Smoke Yams. We're going to be fine in terms of that. But I'm talking about in that base 3-4 trying to stop the run. That's where I look at that defensive line depth and I get a little nervous. When we're in first and second down, trying to stop teams from creating 2nd and 3, 2nd and 2. That's what I'm a little nervous about. But we'll see. RG3, hashtag smoke that 3, hashtag 1000, hashtag so yada, yada, yada. Will the Redskins pick up a DN or are they in running back for the first round of the 2017 draft? Again, too early to start talking about who the Redskins will pick up, what they'll be looking for. If Matt Jones blows up, no, they're not picking a running back in the first round. If Matt Jones stinks, can't stay healthy, fumbling the football, yeah, that might be a priority at the top of the list. You never know what transpires throughout the season that could change the whole face of what they want to do in the draft next year. Too early to be predicting what the Redskins and projecting what they'll need next year. This season is too long. It's too grueling. That will identify and clear the picture up as to what the pressing needs are for the Redskins come the 2017 draft. Too early to really discuss that right now. Let's see. Yeah, Josh Berman says, yo, we cut for a set in terms of the Ravens. Yep, one of the earlier comments awared me of that. Brought that to our attention. Fernie Roquois, I guess I'm going to go with. Where do you see the Skins in the next couple of years? The future's bright. You know, this offense is dynamic. I want to see the maturation of Josh Doxson. If he is what we think he can be, we're going to be fine at the receiver position for years to come. Ryan Grant is continuing to grow. We got Jamison Crowder. We'll probably need, if we don't bring, and I'm assuming we'll bring back at least one of those guys between Pierre and Djax, probably Djax if he performs the way that he's looked all preseason. You'll be fine at receiver. We're fine at tight end between Paul and Jay Reed, who we just locked up, and even Vernon Davis, who's on a 1-year deal. If we like what we see and he performs well, he'll probably be back on another 1-year, 2-year deal or whatever. So, and then we still have Derek Carrier, who is a young player that I really like a lot. So we're really good on the offensive line. Is relatively young. A lot of young and up-and-coming guys there. Offensively, we're set. Defensively is where we got the issues, where we got questions, and where we need to grow. But in terms of the overall health of this roster, in terms of the direction we're going in, I feel really good. I haven't felt this good about Redskins football in the immediate and into the foreseeable future prospects in a long time. I haven't. This is the first time. Normally with the Redskins, I'm a year-to-year guy. I just want this year to be good. Because next year, we were always that team that gets hot at the end of the season like we were under Gibbs 2.0, where we got hot in 05, won the final whatever games to get in. That was the Sean Taylor scoop up the score against the Eagles to win us the division and get in or get into the playoffs, not get in and win the division. Beat Tampa on the road and could have beat the Seattle Seahawks. Had some guys like Carlos Rogers made some plays in that playoff game. We might even beat the Seahawks in Seattle in 05. Did the same thing in 07. We stunk in 06. Joe Gibbs decided he was going to blow up the whole offense, bring in all Saunders and all of these guys, messed everything up. We stunk in 06. Then we went and got on another one of those hot runs. Sean Taylor passes away tragically. Todd Collins has to come in. We get hot with Todd Collins at quarterback. But that's who we were. Win 1 year, stink the next year. Win 1 year, stink the next year. That's who we were. But we're not. I don't think we're that anymore. I think we can be a consistent football team with Scott McCloughan and Jay Gruden and things looking up. I'm really excited about this franchise moving forward. Poopin' for Noopin says, yeah, Matt Jones has size and speed, but it gets nullified by his upright style. Agreed. Fair point. Good counter. If he lowered his pads at the point of contact, even R. Kelly's level, I'd say he's a quality back. I agree. He runs too high. He is not as physical as you would like. I've seen him be physical now. Thought he was really physical in that Chicago game last year on the road. I've seen him run physical. I've seen him run behind his pads. He's just inconsistent with it. You know, it's something that he does need to be better at. I agree. Couldn't agree with you more. Fernie Roquois says, how do you feel about the Skins winning a back-to-back division title? It would be awesome. It would be something that hasn't been done in the NFC East since 03-04 with the Eagles. It'd be a prestigious honor bestowed upon us, and it would give us the confidence that we didn't have last year. Last year we went into the postseason with confidence, but it was blind confidence. We hadn't been there with this group of players, this core group. We hadn't been to the playoffs before. They didn't know what they were walking into. They walked in there confident, but it was blind confidence. And then when Aaron Rodgers shined that light in their face, they really couldn't see. They really were blind, and we went home. When we were up 11-0, should have been up 16-0. Had a safety, missed the extra point. D-Jax doesn't get in. We were struggling early on, and we still were up 11-0. Still should have won the football game, but we didn't know what we were doing. Playoffs was brand new to us, young pups. Now with a year of playoff experience under our belt, there's no reason we can't get to the postseason and tear some stuff up. So I look at it like a opportunity for us to cement ourselves as one of the real major players in the NFC conference if we can go back-to-back. You want to continue to be this team that's caught in mediocrity with the rest of the teams in the league that are caught in mediocrity? Don't win the division this year. Don't make the playoffs this year. But if you want to start taking real legitimate steps forward, gotta win the division this year. It's here for the taking again. No Tony Romo. Eagles just traded away Sam Bradford. The Giants have a horrible offensive line. Don't know what's going to happen with them. Their defense, they got some players, but they got to gel together. This is the opportunity to strike while the iron's hot. Let's see what they do. Daddy Smoke Yam says, prediction on the season and a score for Pittsburgh. I will give you, I gave you my prediction for the season already. It hasn't changed. 10-6 for me. Now, a prediction and score for the Steelers game, can't give you that here. I will give you that the week of. Okay, and I'm going to release my schedule for the upcoming fall season of the Louie T Network here shortly over the next couple of days. So you'll know when you can find me. Everything will be nice and organized and neat. You'll know when to come and find me for Redskins content and all of that good stuff. And there we will discuss Steelers and more. So won't give you that here, but be looking for that in the near future. And let's check Twitter one more time. Let's see. Nothing going on Twitter. And Boba just sent me another tweet. America's Last says, why did we cut Brown? He showed himself. They didn't have space for him. They didn't think he had done enough. And again, we're not at practice. We don't know if he's struggling in pass pro. We don't know if there's something more to that story than meets the eye. All we know is what we saw in the preseason, and we thought what we saw in preseason was enough for him to make this roster. Evidently, Scott McCloughan, Sean McVay, and Jay Gruden all thought otherwise, or at least one of them, that guy most likely being Scott McCloughan, thought otherwise. And so we move on. And again, I'm not torn up about it, but because he wasn't going to play anyway. If he made this roster, he still was going to be behind Matt Jones. Who? Matt Jones! He still was going to be behind Chris Thompson. Still was going to be behind Robert Kelly. So it's not like he was going to make this roster and have an impact. He wasn't getting in the game anyway. So nothing changed. They felt like, okay, if he makes the roster, what are we going to do with him? He's not playing. So why would he make this roster? Take away a spot from somebody else that could actually help us. So I don't have a problem with it. I just thought the guy did enough, showed enough to be on his roster, but evidently he didn't. At least not to them. So it is what it is. But that's going to do it for this installment of the Redskins Report. Thank you guys for joining me. Once again, Redskins have solidified their 53-man roster by cutting 22 players today. Don't know if the actual overall final roster is set, as some moves can be made over the next 24 to 48 hours. We'll see. If they don't do anything in the next 48 hours, pretty much can put to rest that they're going to do anything, make any moves, and they're probably going to roll with the roster that they have going in to the 2016 season. I am a Redskins fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Redskins spirit will never die. Redskins spirit will never fold. Until we meet again, hail to the beloved Washington Redskins. I will see you guys later on in the week when we start discussing Week 1 football. It's about to be here. Can you believe that? Bart Scott. Can't wait. See you next time.